Here we will see request lifecycle of MVC. The request lifecycle is the series of activities that takes place each time an application responds to an HTTP request. The request lifecycle starts with the routing and ends with the result execution. The starting point for every MVC application begins with routing. Routing is a process of mapping the browser request to the controller action and return the response back. The routing module is responsible for matching the incoming URL to routes that we define in our application. Each MVC application has default routing for the default home controller. The route table is the collection of routes defined in the rootconfig.cs file. When an application starts, the received request figures out and finds how it should be handled with the help of the URL routing module. It is responsible for mapping the user request to specific controller actions. By the user's request, the URL module searches the routing table to create root data object. It checks the exact match for the request, which creates request context object and sends the request to MVC handler. Once the URL finding matches, it then stops the process of scanning root data. The MVC handler starts the process of initializing and executing a controller. The MVC framework handles converting root data into a specific controller that can handle the request. It is the responsibility of the MVC root handler to determine the HTTP handler that will serve the request by looking at the received request context. The MVC handler is responsible for initiating the actual process of request and creating the responses. It retrieves the information of the current request by request context object passed to the constructor. Controller factory and activators are responsible for creating an instance of controller class. MVC controllers are responsible for responding to requests made against an ASP.NET MVC website. A controller can contain an action and non-action method. It is used to handle the user request coming from the browser. It will check the request from the browser and identify the action method and return the respective view. A controller is inherited from controller base class, which is inside the system.web.mvc namespace. While creating controller, remember it always suffix with controller keyword. Default controller is home controller and index is view. After the controller has been created, a component called the action invoker finds and selects an appropriate action method to invoke on our controller. Model binding happens before the method is called, which maps the data from our HTTP request to the parameters of our action methods. It is also called as action filter before and after action results are generated. All the public methods of the controller class are called action methods. ASP.NET MVC action methods are responsible to execute the request and generate a response to it. A controller can have any number of actions. A user request can be entering URL into the browser, clicking a link, or submitting a form. The result filters in the ASP.NET MVC applications are executed before or after generating the result for an action. Action result type can be view result, partial view result, redirect to root result, redirect result, content result, JSON result, file result, and empty result, which derives from the action result abstract class. Result filters are called after the action filters. The result filter implements the iResultFilter interface with two methods, onResultExecuting and onResultExecuted. If you want to execute a custom logic before generating the result, then you need to implement the onResultExecuting method. If you want to write custom logic after generating the result, then you need to implement onResultExecuted method. If you want to create a custom result filter, then you need to implement iResultFilter interface. A view engine is a tool used in web development to create dynamic HTML content based on the data from the server. It acts as a template processor which allows developers to integrate data with the predefined HTML templates easily. View engines are commonly used in frameworks like Express.js for Node.js, Django for Python, and Ruby on Rails. By default, ASP.NET MVC supports Webform and Razor View Engine. There are many third-party view engines that are also available for ASP.NET MVC. A typical action method might receive user input, prepare the appropriate response data, and then execute the result by returning a result type. Action result is the return type of an action method. The action result is an abstract class. It is the base class for all types that an action method returns. The built-in result types that can be executed include the following, that is view result, redirect to root result, redirect result, content result, JSON result, and empty result.